All right, here we are back with Mr. Chris Ryan, HHS English teacher and author.
Hi, how are you? Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. How are you tonight?
So far so good, you know, 2 against 1. I'm a little nervous, but
No, don't be nervous. Don't be nervous.
No, we're so glad to have you here.
well, thank you for having me.
Yeah, so your new book, City of Woe.
City of Woe, there it is.
Now,
Yes.
can you tell us, what is this book about?
Well, if you were to take the map of Dante's Inferno, Dante's map of hell, and lay it over the map of Manhattan, you'd get an idea of the kind of the progress of this story. In essence, 2 detectives are chasing down a serial killer who is reenacting or creating images of each level of hell. And he's leaving some notes that suggest that he may or may not be a demon, so there's a little supernatural on it. And it kind of challenges the audience. What do you believe? So, in essence, that's what it is.
Sounds interesting.
Well, thank you very
What
much.
inspired you to write it?
This school right here. I've taught Dante's Inferno to seniors almost every year that I've been here. This is my 16th year, I think. And I teach Dante's Inferno, Hamlet, Gilgamesh, a lot of the classics. And most of the time we connect, but there's always that little kind of gap or abyss. Usually it's the dated language and that kind of stuff. And over the years I was thinking that if there was some kind of entryway, you know, a modern text that would whet the appetite of people to want to read more about Dante's Inferno. And that's where it started going. I have a good background in New York City and police and all that sort of stuff, so I combined them all with a healthy dose of rock and roll and all the conversations that I had with students over about 15 years of discussing Dante's Inferno. So a lot of this book is inspired from Hackensack High School.
Wow.
There you go.
Wow.
Yeah. Ta-da.
I mean, how was the writing process? How long did it take you to write this book?
Oh, boy. When I was in college, back before America was created,
Long ago.
I did a treatment for a first novel, and the only thing that survived out of that was the word Mallory, or the name Mallory. And then years later, again, after teaching Dante's Inferno for so long, I started thinking about resurrecting that name and the detective. And I guess I worked when I was going to grad school at Rutgers, another Jersey tie-in there.
Mm-hmm.
I started working on, for the master's thesis, you had to do a couple of short stories. And I asked permission if I could do a treatment for a novel. I handed in a 500-page manuscript and won a Distinguished Achievement Award upon graduation from grad school for the rough of this. So that was about 3 drafts. And then I went about 5 or 7 drafts after that. So I've been through this about 10 times. I guess I've been at it about 8 or 9 years. But I was learning the craft. I think the second book, which I'm going to begin writing this summer, should go far quicker. It better go far quicker. So yeah, that's what I was doing with that.
So for your second book, do you have any ideas?
I do very much. This is part of a trilogy. Dante actually wrote the Divine Comedy, which was 3 sections of one book. The Inferno,
Right.
when he traveled through hell, Purgatorio, where he went through purgatory, and Paradiso, where he went through paradise. Mallory and Gunnar, the stars of this book, will go through each of those as envisioned on Earth. So this one they went through hell. The second book they go through the kind of a version of purgatory. And right now the working title is 1,000 Cuts, based on the old saying, dying a death by 1,000 cuts, little annoyances. And that's kind of where I will go, what I'll explore on the second book. And the third book will be based on Paradiso.
Wow.
And we'll see how that goes.
Out.
Well, we'll see. And there's a couple other books planned, but one thing at a time. So.
All right. Now, other than your fascination with Dante's Inferno, I also see, the detective story archetype. Why? Why the detective story?
I come from a family of cops. My father was a police officer for 28 years in the South Bronx. My brother was a detective for 20 years. My cousin was a lieutenant 25, 30 years, something like that. So it's all around. As a matter of fact, I was a journalist for 8 years, an award-winning journalist, and it was in the Bronx in the late 80s, early 90s, which was basically a crack war. And one of the reasons I'm a teacher now is because I covered so much death at that time that we used to run body counts on the front page. And it was usually something like 12 dead, 27 wounded. And I got so, I felt so guilty about it that I was kind of living off these dead teenagers, you know, from crack corners, that I applied to the NYPD. And I was accepted. I was waiting to go in, and one of the superintendents of education in the Bronx called me, and he was furious with me. And he challenged me, he bet me a steak dinner at the best restaurant in Manhattan that I would love teaching. So I hadn't gotten into the police department yet. I took the teaching gig on a bet. And then I found that working with live students after covering all the dead ones was just the greatest energizer in the world. And when the NYPD called up, I said, nah, I know what I'm doing. But I always felt like I owed them. So when I started thinking of the who could go through hell, I mean, who better than two detectives? And one's very serious, and the other one, he's a bad boy.
So
Better misbehaves.
Is your own personality, is it reflected through one of the detectives?
Well, a lot of people that I know have begun to read this, and they all seem to be able to peg one person or the other. Oh, that's you, that's you. And if I'm really honest, all the major characters are me. You know, the serious detective who doesn't want to be labeled, the not serious detective who has other things on his mind. Even the villain is a version of how I would deal with things, or how I might be able to see things. You know, going through your life, you get different challenges, and I just explored it each way. So in a way, every writer, you know, their major characters are reflections of parts of themselves. So there's a weird way to read this as an argument in one person's mind, but actually it's a detective story.
All right. Now,
So.
do you mean this for me to be pure literature or entertainment?
This is written very consciously as a popular bestseller style thriller. The idea, the thesis from the beginning was, can I get a very popular, very easily read story that people would enjoy? And apparently it's a very quick read. Everyone who's read it said one former student said she read it in one 12-hour sitting. God bless her. But it was meant to be very popular. I have a brother who rarely reads. I wanted it to be something that he could read on the train down to work, you know. And the idea is, if they get hooked by that, and they keep hearing Dante, they might go and explore something else, you know. And that's the hook back in. I have no delusions that I'm a literary writer. I might be able to teach them literature, but I'm definitely a pop writer, so it's meant to be that.
Okay, so you're not focusing on one audience per se. You're focusing
Well, I mean, there's layers. I mean, the front layer, the top layer, is the pop stuff. But obviously, there's a reference and a structure that follows Dante's Inferno very closely. And in doing my research in grad school, I found out that James Joyce was very influenced by Dante, and his Dubliners and his Ulysses is laced with references. So I researched those references, and they were all tied to different characters. So I took the names of those characters and named minor characters, and the villain, Paul Farrington, is named after a Joyce character. And you can see where those characters line up and where they show up in Joyce's stuff, and it's hopefully another bridge back to, you know, an author that should be read. So it's an homage. It's a bowing down before the greats. But it's written in a pop style. So
that's interesting. Do you have any advice for other students who may want to pursue writing?
Yeah, write. Just write. Let it stink. Just write. It's so much easier to have something that's a piece of terribleness and rewrite it than to look at a blank screen.
Right.
You know, and embrace the idea of rewrite. You know, if you're playing basketball, right, or they've got some guys who got some superstars from the track team,
Yeah.
right? That it wasn't their first race that made them great. These guys worked hard. They broke a sweat. Same thing with writing. You just go and do it and keep doing it. There you go.
Thank you
That's
so
great
much.
advice.
Thank you for coming. I mean,
welcome.
tonight. And
Available on Amazon and Barnes & Noble.
please buy
Great
his
price.
book. Yes. Thank you again
You're
for
welcome.
coming.
Thank you very much for having me.
And we want to know if you can actually read an excerpt from the book.
Okay, I will.
And and so after this commercial break, we'll have Mr. Ryan here read an excerpt from City of Woe.
Yipes. Okay, little setup here. This is at the first crime scene. Mallory and Gunnar were called in. It was their day off. It was Palm Sunday. They were supposed to eat Mallory's mother-in-law's homemade lasagna, but they got called in, so they're really agitated. They have a reputation for taking on the weird cases, so they got kind of teased a little bit by the other detectives, and they're ready to leave. They begin to walk off, and we begin. Oh, I'm sorry. This crime scene is in the bottom of a subway entrance, okay, way up in North Manhattan. So they're about to walk away, and Tizzy's voice became shriller than usual. "I welcome your assistance, detectives. Here's what we know." The partners listened. They say to Mallory, "We believe the victim, identified from his driver's license as William Hill of Brooklyn, received a fatal head trauma from behind and fell down the stairs, during which he received several other injuries." Mallory nodded, pointing above. "What's the story with this T-shirt flag?" The annoying detective glanced at it, then back at Mallory. "That's one of the reasons why the Lou called you." "Yeah, I know I've got to sign off on this case because I'm technically the primary, but this one's made for you." Mallory's partner, Gunnar, glanced at the flapping T-shirt, then the body, and then to Tizzy. "Did he go to the show?" "How did you know?" Mallory pointed up. Gunnar answered. "The Who played the Garden last night. He was there, right?" Tizzy laughed. The sound was harsh, like glass breaking close to the ear. "Who told you? The Stiff? A voice from beyond?" Mallory sighed. "Stick to the facts or we're out." Gunnar picked up an evidence bag off the stairwell ledge, which held a complete ticket. He shrugged. "Ticket's whole, so he didn't make it. Detective work, baby." "You got to get out more often, Tiz. They don't rip tickets at the Garden anymore. They scan them." Gunnar held the ticket, pointed to a barcode. "More efficient. And fans get a collectible. I have a box of ripped-in-half tickets at home from the good old days. Zeppelin, Dylan, The Who. If they were whole, I'd probably frame them." Mallory smiled at his partner. "What, you too old to go to shows these days?" "I saw Led Zeppelin for $8, Gunnar said. Now it costs over $100. Forget that." Tizzy waved the discussion away. "Whatever with the ticket." Turns to Mallory. "We all know the Lou thinks you're Babe Ruth on these cases, but sorry, pal, this is a dead end." Mallory shrugged. "Nothing I can do about it. Lou said the call came from the commissioner's office." Tizzy nodded, smirking. "Yeah, Mayor messed this one up, bragging about how safe the subways are, and now this hits the fan? I hear he went nuts, wants an arrest immediately." "Sorry, man. It was out of my hands before I knew it." Mallory shrugged again. "You got everything you need to work your weird mojo?" Mallory bristled. "I don't work mojo, I work cases. To do that on this one, I need to confirm the kid's name, home address. Who knows if the license is legit? I need the names of any friends with whom he went to the show." "With whom? You crack me up." Mallory and Gunnar stared at Tizzy until he cleared his throat, started up the stairs. "On it. I got no problem handling this end of the investigation. I just don't want any part of that weird nonsense. That's all you. Mallory looked around. Seemed like run-of-the-mill murder to him. He then Gunnar followed Tizzy up the steps to the street. What are you talking about? You freaked out by a T-shirt? Tizzy smiled, held up another evidence bag filled with index cards. Nah, this is what shoves this case officially onto your turf. He handed the bag to Mallory. From what we can tell, reading them from where they were laying, they're observations, bits of an account of what happened. Gunnar was unimpressed. From whom? Tizzy theatrically washed his hands. They seemed to be from the killer, narrating the victim's last moments, up to and including his death. Except at that point, the cards actually have the Vic telling the story. And then it goes a little beyond. Mallory lowered his eyes to the index card. Don't, Gunnar said. Mallory opened the evidence bag anyway. Thanks a lot. You got a wire stuck on me. Hi.
So that was excellent.
Well, thank you.
Suspenseful. I mean, thank you. You know, I gotta say, I'm definitely buying it on Kindle after the show.
There you go.
Yeah,
Go to Amazon.com, BarnesandNoble.com. It's for the glorious price of $2.99.
$2.99, people.
I put it as low as I could get it because I want as many people to buy it as possible.
That's
I think
great.
you'll definitely have huge success.
Oh, cool. Thank you very much.
No problem.
But what made you want to read that particular excerpt?
Well, one of the problems is that Gunnar curses like a sailor. And it was very hard to find a scene where he wasn't ruining the scene with curses. Mm-hmm. And my wife is a partner in all this stuff. And I was going to do, there's a hospital scene later on that's fairly touching. And she felt that just getting them into the crime, getting whoever wants to watch this, into the crime might be more serviceable as far as what's going on with the story. So we went through a bunch of different things, and she thought that one was the fairest entrance. So as a rule, kiddies, always listen to the wife.
And what an entrance. But thank you so much for coming out here tonight.
Thank you very much. It's very nice for you to have me here. I appreciate it.
Yeah, we wish you all the success, you know. And after this commercial break, we're actually going to have members of the track team coming on for an interview.
Big stuff. Very cool. Congratulations to those guys.
So, see you then.
Thank you.
That was a lot of fun.